Hi, everyone. This is Beth Kitchen, your instructor for NTR 500, and I got a lot of questions on our discussion board about social media. And so I called in our expert because I'm really not an expert on social media. I'm out there trying it just like you guys, and unfortunately, I feel like I fail at it a lot. So I'm going to get as much out of this as you do. So what I have done is I've got Kevin Storr. He's our Director of Communications at the School of Health Professions, which is, of course, where our Nutrition Sciences Department is located. And he's going to fill us in because he knows a lot more about this than I do. So, Kevin, thank you so much for being here and sharing this time with us.
No, I'm happy to help. And we should always say expert when we talk about me on this because it's always evolving. We're always learning. So I may say something now and a year from now, it may be out of date, or I may say something now and your students have heard something else. So I think, expert can be used loosely in so much, but especially social media. But we're all in this together. We're trying, we're doing our best. And I think that's one thing to remember about social media is as you do it, if people recognize that you're trying, you're not out there in the snarky world or the cancellation world, but you're trying to do good, I think people can be forgiving.
And that's something that I always look at. It's like the people that get noticed, sometimes they are being snarky or really outrageous. And most of us, the questions that I'm getting, and I'm going to be looking over here on my screen for the discussion board, that's often a question: how do I get noticed but still be evidence-based, still be professional? And so that can be a really big struggle for us.
It is. There is that fine line in there, and I'm not sure you can define it, but how do you become that professional who is the nutrition expert or an expert in another aspect of wellness and had not necessarily snark, but maybe humor? So I'm not sure that we could define a line in there, but anytime I tweet anything, whether it's a serious comedic attempt or something like that, I try to reread it just to make sure I'm covering all my bases, because you don't want to inadvertently offend people with what you're doing, especially if it's a lame comedic attempt, as we see every now and then, right?
Right. And sometimes things can get you into trouble. And I think for us, a lot of the questions that I get from my students, because I really stress evidence-based nutrition, medicine, science, and that gets hard because we can't go out there, if we're being honest, and say, take this supplement and it will cure your cancer, or just eat this diet and all your health problems will be solved. If we're being evidence-based, those messages, they're not as exciting as what you would do, say, if you're marketing a product. We're trying to be honest and evidence-based, but still make our messages compelling and exciting. And I find that to be a huge challenge.
It is a challenge because, there's no better way to put it in this day and age other than that people are challenging science as well. Like, you have a faction out there that do not believe scientists. They do not believe the evidence that's presented to them. So I think that's one of your challenges or battles or whatever, is you are showing the science and the proof behind what you're doing, and so if you're out there and people are challenging on you, just be careful, because sometimes people just want their message to be propelled. And if you're responding to people who have crazy, baseless ideas, then you're kind of giving them their own little megaphone as well. So that's another fine line type issue where, when do I engage somebody and when do I just let them be? My response is always answer them once. Tell them why you see things the way you do and what backs your opinion on this. And then if they try and keep at it and keep attacking you, just ignore them.
And that's one of the questions that I got on the discussion board was, how do we deal with nutrition professionals? Sometimes they actually are registered dietitians. They've got the credentials, but they're out there with messages that aren't evidence-based, or people who are calling themselves nutritionists. We're becoming registered dietitians, but some people call themselves nutritionists, but they don't really have the background. And one of the questions that I got was, how do we address that? I come from an angle that I think we all need to be a little more assertive in addressing that, because I feel like sometimes agreeing to disagree at first is not really a good answer, because we want to get out there with the real message. I always stress to the students, no ad hominem attacks, meaning don't attack the person. Address what they are saying, why it is inaccurate, and what the real information is. So really always focus on the words they're saying, what they are saying, as opposed to the person. And then I like your advice of say it once and get out.
Yeah. Because you can go on and on and on. And you do this really well in a lot of your segments on Fox 6 and stuff you've done on social media is addressing, you may not call out so-and-so said this, but it's like, here's why X, Y, and Z is wrong. And I think that's a good point is you're going to be looking for content. Like right now, your social media, it's all new and exciting and it goes with your classes. But as you linger in this world for years, it's like, okay, what do I talk about next? But you're going to see this type of thing all the time where it'll be that great big headline on your Facebook page where it's like, oh my gosh, do these 3 things and you'll live to be 150. But I think that's where you come in. It's like, oh, that's just something I can say. It could help you live longer. But in reality, it's not really going to have that much impact when you think of all the different things out there for you. So I think look at these ideas as, like you said, topics I can grab on and personalize for myself and give you the reasons why you do things.
That is great advice. And one of the things that I recommend to students, and I have not done this myself as much, I've been putting some thought into it, but I think finding sort of a niche. I've seen dietitians and other health professionals do really well. Let's say they're a renal dietitian, and so they really focus on that particular population. I see people who are diabetes dietitian or working with eating disorders. And so what you can do is start with your patient population, the actual patients that you see, and start to build your audience and then really address and focus in. There's a really great vegan vegetarian dietitian that I sometimes look at her website. I'm not a vegan vegetarian, but her website is really good and she gives out really solid evidence-based advice. And so I think sometimes finding that little tribe that you speak to can be a very effective way of getting noticed.
Right. One thing about social media is you get stuff shared. And that's how you get your traction in your posts. Because, we'll post something on Facebook, and if nobody looks at it, nobody likes it, it really is just dead in the water. But if we put something out there and this person likes it and that person shares it, you get all this organic traction. And that's what you're going for. So if you can get a strong core, like you said, if it's a renal group or a diabetic group, if you can get them sharing your message, that's going to let other people see it. And then if you think about those groups, they are focused on, say, their one health issue, but they also need the whole wellness package. There's so much other information that you can provide that will benefit them beyond just what they're facing at that moment. So if you look at it in that sense, that reach your core audience and then have them help you expand your message. I think that's a good way to go to things.
And that was one of the questions that I had. I'm going to look at some of these questions on the discussion board. Got to put my glasses on. I'm thinking of looking at the aging woman, since I am one. That's becoming what I'm sort of thinking. Maybe that's where I should go. Healthy aging, because that's me now. So Allie is asking, I am interested in learning more about tailoring social media posts for specific audiences. And that's something that we just sort of touched on, and even using Instagram and other social media sites and how to tailor those posts. So we sort of touched on that. Any other advice on tailoring to your audience?
Yeah, I think really know specifically who your audience is. And I tell a lot of people when we do this, write down who your audience is. Because if I ask a lot of people, they say, well, my target audience is everybody. And it's like, no, it's not everybody, because everybody has different needs. Who do you really want to reach with your message? And then when you have that, go from there. Say you've got your primary audience, and then who are the secondary audiences that you can touch on? So always remember who you are targeting, because that's the people you want to reach.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Add to that, I'm sorry to interrupt, Beth, but
oh no, I interrupted you.
No, tailoring the message is also tailoring how they receive the message. So Instagram is so popular right now in certain demographics, but Facebook is huge among other demographics. And so while you may prefer Instagram, you may need to be on Facebook. And that, you know, they are very similar in how you use your tactics to reach people, but also recognize that your audience is getting your message in a certain way that works best for them. Like you can say, hey, I know you're on Facebook, but follow me on Instagram, but that's not what they want to do. So you also have to not only tailor your message, but tailor how you get that message out there.
And now we have the site TikTok. That's really big with particularly younger people. And I think we also have to look at what's the style. Instagram is more photos, obviously, although I see a lot of people putting a lot of text down below it. But then also TikTok is lots of short little, very energized video.
It is. It is. And I would give you a strategy for TikTok if I knew what a strategy for TikTok was. And I think this kind of goes back to who is your audience. If your audience is on TikTok and you know TikTok, then use that, because I'm sure there are ways to reach them in that method as well. Because one thing you see is the evolution of social media. You know, we used to have these lists where if you want to say this, you use Facebook. If you want to do this, you use Twitter. And then there was Vine way back in the day, you know. But right now, look at Instagram. They have stories. You can do videos. You can do everything that you can do on all those other platforms. So, you know, don't be afraid to try a TikTok method on Instagram or a TikTok method on Facebook. You know, so the videos may be popular on TikTok, but your audience may not be on TikTok. So don't be afraid to mix and match what you do on different platforms. If it's entertaining or if it's educational, or you know, the mix of educational and entertaining, it should do well on different platforms.
Yes, we call that edutainment. So the other thing that I always do is, you know, I'm trying to get some traction on Instagram. Not sure if that's the right place for me as a, you know, 50 plus something woman. I don't know if women like me are on Instagram, and I'm going to be looking at that and seeing, you know, where people are. I know Twitter's kind of falling out of favor, but people are still on Twitter. But, you know, sometimes I go on and I look at other dietitians that are on Instagram, and what I find is they have these really sort of consistent messages. It's not a bunch of new stuff all the time. They sort of have a theme, again, sort of a niche audience and sort of a foundational message, and then find different ways of sort of delivering that message.
Yeah, let me share my screen real quick if I can find this one. Because this reminds me of, do you see Tara Harmon's Instagram right now on your screen?
Right, yes, I do.
So the one thing about Tara, who I'm guessing your students know or will know, depending on how they are in the program, but in addition to all the just different posts that she has in the regular photos, you know, if you look down here, she also has a video post here with 204 views. So you're getting a lot of video. But up at the top where she has her stories, here's the wellness lover, the consumer, the cook, the educator. So she does a really good job of knowing who she wants to reach and then categorizing what they are, which is good because if I'm looking for someone like this and I see her page and I'm looking for wellness information or cooking information, I can click on her stories and automatically go and see what she's done in those areas. And I think Tara is one of those good examples of having that focus. Like she knows she wants this to be a mixture of personal and nutrition, which is why it's Nutrition with Tara. And she goes and segments things well, because like you and I have discussed, you know, people are coming here looking for certain things. And if you can make it easy for them to find, there's a lot. And this is also another thing to say, social media is more than just your latest post. It can be done in ways where you make it something for the consumer, where they have a lot of different options and they come back and see what you've done in the past.
So that's really great. Now, how do people, one of the questions that I get from people is, how do I actually make these posts? You know, Instagram is a little challenging because it's hard to do on the computer. It's really more geared towards the phone. You can use their website. Right now, when I go on my Instagram, it tells me that you have to click notifications, and I'm confused and I can't get into it on the computer. So I just find all these sort of technical challenges can sometimes be annoying. What are some things that people need to know about? Like, how do you actually produce an Instagram photo. You could just take a photo from your phone, but how can you do some of those other things like people who use Canva and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think look at how everything is connected today. Like if I take a picture on my phone, I click AirDrop and it's automatically connected to my computer. So I don't have to worry about open the photo, send it here, edit it there. You can edit on your phone or you can edit on your computer and then send it back to your phone. There's just so many different ways to make just a random picture out there more vibrant. You know, your phone even has its own filters. So if you're taking a picture, say a filter on your phone, and then you put it in Instagram and use a filter on there, now you're getting into all sorts of dynamics that go into this. And one thing I would say is, action can be many different ways. Action can be that video of somebody doing something, but action can also be somebody in the process of doing something. So I would not look at Instagram or any other of these groups as just a static, oh, here's a building, here's a sunset. Just think of ways to tell that story. And then they also have that stories section where you can post those up there and they remain stories for, say, 24 hours, or you can do it and archive it, which is what Tara was doing, which is why she has hers segmented like that.
That's really interesting. I had not thought of that segmented. I've never quite understood the whole story thing. I did not, again, older woman, right?
Well,
so I have not grown up with this like a lot of the students have.
If people look at the School of Health Professions, you'll see, I don't think we have any stories at this point, and part of that is just me. Like you said, I'm a lot older than all these students. And so stories is not my thing. I have a lot going on in my world, even in the COVID era, but stories are where a lot of people get their information. That's more popular than just a regular static post at this point. So, and that's one thing to think about is what story are you telling? I think the best posts are those that look natural. They look like they've all of a sudden organically happened, but a lot of those are really planned out, especially if you think of the social influencers. They're not influencers just because they're always on there and they're saying wacky things. For the most part, they're really producing what they're doing and thinking through the entire day or that entire post or a series of posts.
And that was one of the questions on the discussion board was, I want to be an influencer. How do I do that? That's a tough one.
It is, because if there was a simple answer, then everybody would do it. I think that's the cliche thing out there. But part of that is having the right message and reaching the right audience. And I wish I could spell it out a little better than that. But, think about tagging people. Like if you want to be an influencer, try and get into their world by mentioning them or doing stories about them. Also, keep an eye on the people that you want to emulate. See how they have done it. If you have their whole history, you could probably see how they've tracked through to get to that influencer level. There's also ways out there where, at least I should say, I think there are ways out there where you can buy subscribers, that kind of thing, which I would never recommend because you want to get to where you are because you're reaching your true audience. My point is it's going to be slow. You don't just all of a sudden get online and become this influencer. Like people have to believe in you. They have to believe in your message. And that takes consistency and it takes longevity, because you want to be an influencer that's not a gimmick influencer. I think you see those that just skyrocket to the top because they're saying outrageous, outlandish things. But yours is probably going to be that slow burn because it's like, oh, this person loves what you're doing and they start sharing it. And then their friends see it and they start sharing it. Or say, a group like the Fancy group or the, what's your A&D group?
Right, the academy, yeah, the academy, yeah.
Academy, that type of thing. So just getting back to that point, it's this slow burn for you. You're going to start with a couple friends who like you and share you, and then their friends will like you and share you. So it's not going to be an overnight sensation because those are the ones who are probably walking that fine line and will eventually get burned when they say something too crazy and they fall victim to the cancellation society. But make your own steps of progress and analyze what you're doing. It could be month to month. It could be year to year because you're not going to just all of a sudden have 1 million followers. It gets into that exponential stuff, kind of like your retirement savings. This year you'll have 100. Next year you'll have 1,000. The year after that, 100,000 or whatever it it grows. It's not going to be immediate. And I think that's a little difficult, especially as fast as social media changes.
So it really sounds to me, reaching out to those people that can share your message, who are interested. I always call it finding your voice. Mm-hmm. What is the voice that you want to speak with? Your underlying philosophy. It doesn't mean that all the posts have to be that exact same thing, but you got to have. I don't want to use the word gimmick, because it's not a gimmick, but it's what is your voice? What is your underlying theme? And I think I see that as being kind of important.
It's very important. It's your voice, it's your style, it's who you are, it's who you want to be. And it's definitely, it's not, there are plenty of gimmicks and stuff out there, but you'll find it easier if you are who you are in all your posts. And if you are one of those with a sense of humor, show that in your posts. If you're somebody who's really serious, don't be afraid to be that serious person, because I think we all struggle when we try to be someone who we are not. And saying this is your voice is really the perfect example, because you hear this when you see interviews with, say, comedians or actors and that type of thing, and they all begin emulating others or trying to be like others, and then eventually they find their voice. And I think when you're on social media, you will find your voice by the reaction you get from your audiences. When you start to get more likes using certain tones, then you're like, okay, this is going to work for me, and this is what I will do in my future as I move forward.
What do you recommend for people as far as, the nuts and bolts? Like, how do I do that Instagram picture? A lot of folks, like I said, are already on Canva. I'm trying to figure out how to just use like a regular PowerPoint slide, because I think a lot of people do that as well. And I just kind of am a little bit more in tune with that. But so things like Canva. And then the other thing I want to ask you is, for a while I was using Hootsuite as a way of getting messages out to a bunch of different social media things all at once. You could use this one message and get it sent out to all. I found that Hootsuite is getting really annoying because of ownership, and it's not letting me use it anymore. And so I'm finding that I haven't been using that. Is there another media management tool that might be better than Hootsuite?
I see a lot of people using Sprout, and UAB as a whole uses Sprout. And I have not really touched on it, so I couldn't give you the details of that, but the people I do know who have used it really like that platform out there. One thing I will say, though, is as much as it is an image-driven world, the best posts on Facebook, and obviously Instagram is all photos, videos, etc. Facebook, Twitter, the best ones have some kind of imagery with them. But I think you also need to think about things outside of just what the image is, because you inevitably want to get your message out there. And so, there are your true message, which is when you're trying to help people. But if you're trying to look at things that will grow your audience, you may want to look beyond that. Say, ask a question. And this isn't really a nutrition question, but one of the things my wife does on Twitter is I'll make a rude comment about, like, say, raisin rum ice cream or something, and then she'll be on Twitter, because she has a lot of followers, and she's like, is raisin rum ice cream just for old people? Or does anybody, I think she said it like, does anybody?
I actually saw her post. It was really, really funny. She was like, she was like, I love
it only for people
ice cream. I didn't know that was
somebody under 80 eat raisin rum ice cream. But I think about that, this becomes an interactive post where people are responding, you're responding back. Another thing people like to see are, I call it behind the curtain. Like, what really, when you open Wizard of Oz curtain, you see the guy with all the levers, like, show people what you're doing. Like, if you're giving these great tips on what to eat, how to eat, what to cook, how to cook, show them that. Show them what goes on, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. People love mistakes. Think of the blooper reels in movies. Think of, just the self-effacing stuff that people do. Like, that's a good thing. Just show people that you're human out there. There's a lot of ways.
That's like my banana bread that I made that I totally botched. It weighed as much as like a healthy newborn infant when it came.
Round 2 was excellent, right?
Round 2 came out good. I did the muffins because my family pressured me into, you can do this. You can make banana muffins or bread. But the bread, oh my God, it was like.
And that is perfect, though, because the people who see the original Now they're responding, they're rooting for you. So we're waiting for round two. And we see the family involvement. I think this is perfect because you want it to be that social event. And if your people love you enough to watch you and follow you like that, then they want to see more stuff like that.
So these are some really good tips. I want to ask you if some other things. Some people are asking again, just the tech. Some people are saying, Kelly's asking, I'm not very tech savvy. I don't know how to share other posts. And one of the things that I recommend is go to online tutorials. Mm-hmm. There are so many online tutorials. I look to see, we use, I'm using a lot of LinkedIn Learning. I look to see UAB employees, we all have access to it. I was hoping students did, and they don't, sadly. But LinkedIn Learning, but other places have really good tutorials. So if you're like, I don't even know where to start, find some good tutorials online because they're out there, and I think they can probably help you with that sort of how to, like literally, how do I do this in a very literal sense? Yep. And then I have another question here.
A lot of them have help sites. So don't be afraid to go to their help site and see what their own advice is.
Yeah. And Kevin, as you said, just, try some stuff. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. And then another thing, Rita's asking, I would like to know what it takes to create eye-catching headlines, buzzwords that get clicks. Is there a special formula to that? And that's, again, when we're trying to be evidence-based and honest, that's hard. I can tell you some things that I have found that work and probably more of the time don't work, but asking, a question, what have you found? What are you doing? I also think that, again, one of the things that we talked about in writing for real people was make it very personal, use personal pronouns, you, we, instead of individuals and those other sort of academic words.
Yeah, agreed. You're trying to reach thousands, but you're really talking to one. That one person, it's very intimate. I mean, think about your phone. It's just you and this one little screen. That's who you are reaching. So ultimately, your audience is one person, even though you're trying to reach thousands. So think about that. The other thing I would say is they don't necessarily have to be outlandish titles. Think about the magazines you see at the supermarket there, where it's like top 3X or 5 things you need to know about this. And they're not necessarily like sensational, but if you tell your audience, I'm going to give you 3 simple things about this, then they know it's going to be a quick read. They know they're going to take away at least 3 things that will help them. And then they'll want to click, or at least we think they will want to click. But, look at that aspect as well. Tell the audience what you're going to tell them right up front. And then hopefully they will click because it will interest them. So you don't have to necessarily be like if you don't eat, here's 3 things or you'll die type thing. That's always the running joke when you see media stuff is after the commercial break, 3 things in your salad that will kill you.
Right, right. You're eating these 3 toxic things and you need to stop right now or you're going to die. So but
here's 3 things hidden in your salad you don't know about. It doesn't have to be like you're going to die, but what is in there? I don't know.
Right. I think those are really good tips. And I'm going to share all those tips those tip sheets that you have given us as well. Any other tips for people? This can be, you and I were talking before we started this and how it can kind of get you down when you really want to get noticed and you're not. And, if this is not for you, you don't have to do this. Not everybody has to do this. If this is not your thing and you're like, I don't even like being on social media, you know what? That's okay. You're going to be talking to your patients, you're going to have your clients, and you will be, reaching out to people in other ways. But if you do want this, you got to hang in there and try not to get too bogged down when things aren't working so well.
Right. I just think, ask yourself ultimately, is this what you need to do? Is this what you want to do? Because it's like, for me, cutting the grass is cutting the grass. But for a landscaper, they see all the beauty of what they can do with the different things out there. So would this just be a job for you, or would this be your passion? If it's your passion, just keep going and people will recognize that you're passionate about what you're doing. And again, it is difficult to grow these audiences. It takes time. And then audiences change over time. Think about yourself when you first got onto, say, maybe it's Instagram or Twitter, you were like always on there. What's going on? And then maybe a year later, you're like, oh, I haven't been on there in 2 months. I'll go check. So your audience is going to come and go. Your passion's going to come and go. So you really need to want to do this. And hopefully it can be a fun thing. Also think about the multimedia aspect. Like if you're doing the social, do you have a blog you're pointing people to, or do you have your own website that you're pointing to people to? So think about how that works in the big picture and how much self-promotion you need. Or if you work for a company that has social media, maybe you can just get involved with them, and that way you're promoting your name as well as what you do, but it's through the company. That way they're already going to have a lot of followers, and maybe they'll let you do where you tag yourself so that you can drive people from the company also to your own personal stuff as well. So there's a lot of different ways out there, and not one specific thing works for everybody, but think about what entertains you on social media and what drives you to like someone or interact with someone. Reddit does those Ask Me Anything, which is a great idea if you're really ready to answer any question you get, because there's a lot of craziness out there. So think about what works for you and what you can sustain over time, and just, enjoy it, have fun with it, be positive if you can, that kind of thing.
Kevin, those are great tips, and I thank you so much for coming on here today with me and talking about this. And I think you really helped the students a lot, and I appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'd say if anybody wants to contact me for more information or anything else, it is just Storr, STORR, @uab.edu. I'd be happy to answer your questions. I'd be happy to share different guidelines that UAB has. They do, of course, have student conduct codes that you should look over. But I think if you're doing the right thing, you're going to be all right there. Another thing that they have on there is accessibility on social media. So there's a lot of guides that UAB can give you to help you with what you're looking for. Contact me. I'd be happy to share with you, chat with you more, whatever you need. I'm here to help.
And yeah, and I want you to send that site to me so I can post that for people as well. That would be great.
I'll do that. I'll send you all those links.
Great. Thanks so much, Kevin.
My pleasure. Good seeing you all.